right, so we just played 1836. Sophia, what'd you think?
I liked it. This is the fourth time I've played it. It
Yeah.
seems to get better every time.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we played it about the same number of times. I played it probably 4 or 5 times. I think I played it maybe 2 or 3 times more than you. So maybe like 6 or 7 times. So this qualifies more as a review than a first impressions for us. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I love it. It seems like there's interesting decisions all the way through the game. The initial company auction I've never seen really go the same way twice.
Mm-hmm.
The build outs are always slightly different. After a few games, you get used to some things like figuring out which,
Yeah, there is more of a meta.
right,
Yeah.
which companies are going to be able to buy a 2 train at the end of the second round and which are not. But yeah, I'm not sure I have a lot to say about it. It just seems like a very solid entry. This game was not particularly exciting. Like no companies ever got dumped on anyone.
Yeah, it wasn't as interesting as other games I've played of it. There wasn't a lot of negotiation. There was some, but there wasn't as much negotiation as there has been in previous games. There wasn't like too many shenanigans. I think the more you become familiar with the game, the less likely that is, because people can plan for it, know what's possible, I feel like definitely the first time you play this game, you're like, oh, and then when you play it more, you kind of just like, okay, I know this is a thing, and I know that's a thing, and you kind of it becomes more of a game of inches than. So to recap what happened in this game, and that's pretty much what this game was. It was a game of inches, where we all basically survived, and we called it because it would have been just seeing the bank break and then who had the most money at the end, and it's not, it wasn't staying up until 1 or 2 in the morning to figure that out.
No.
But yeah, it wasn't as interesting as other games, but it's still definitely like, I'll give my thoughts after everyone, but it's definitely like not. I mean, we all enjoyed it, right? Yeah. So Jacob, what do you think? This was your first. Well, I don't think it's your first play, but you don't remember,
right? I sort of remember the miners and the auction, but the actual what happened here, no. Yeah, I liked it. Needs another player, but
yeah, I think the 3-player game. I said it to start. The 3-player game is probably degenerate. I feel like it does need another player. Yeah. I don't mind playing it with 3, but it definitely it can it becomes an issue of like who gets the 4th company and like stuff like that. Like
the miners are definitely way more interesting decision wise than privates in general. Like so it creates a more interesting game and how they interact with the majors. And
so one thing I don't like about this game is that the majors are almost all the same.
Yeah. So yes, I'll go into my thoughts now, I guess. So number 1, I think this is perhaps the best game of 2019. It is either this or Bios Origins for me. I think that this is a great intro game, as you said. I think it has all the rules of 1830, and I love 1830. 1830 is my favorite 18xx game. And this has, it's not 1830. So that's why it's not better than 1830. But it has a lot of the things that I enjoy about 1830, but it's a great intro. It doesn't have like a weird, funky private auction that you have to teach to people. The auction makes sense. It's still very much a interesting auction, right? The way that you have to kind of bid for the companies and get companies that'll give you synergies that kind of work together to be able to do what you're going to do. And like you said, every auction is different, right? What you get is different, and then what you're building is different. The build out is very different every game, depending on that private auction. So if you have, it's a lot of games, you're going to see the same layout every time. You know, particularly with the more Run Good Companies games, right? You're gonna see the same routes pretty much every game.
Yeah.
This game, it can be completely different. I mean, I usually see something like this here, and I usually see, you know, something like that there. But because of the different privates, things can flow very differently in the
You
game.
could very easily go this way with those.
And I've actually seen less build up here
Yeah.
in this game than I've seen in the other game, where the 10 usually has a lot of stuff coming through it. But I think it has a lot of things going for it. It is quick start, right? Like you do those 3 first operating rounds, and most of the yellow tiles are on the board. So you really get an idea of like, okay, this is. I feel like that's like an asymmetric start almost, right? Like every game you're gonna, okay, this is our start, and now we have to work with this. So I really like that. I really like that it's relatively quick. I mean, we played a very slow game of this, I think, but like the other Winsomes, this can be played in. You know, I think we started around like 7:30. And you know, I think this could easily be a 3-ish hour game. Definitely, 4 hours max, under 4 hours. If you're going the distance, you know, I think that it has a lot of replayability, depending on how things play out. The rules overhead is very low. I feel like it has a lot of the benefits of like an 1822 or an 1822 MRS, which we all like. But I feel like this has a lot of the benefits of 1822, where you have the minors that you acquire, but with a less rules overhead. We were considering playing 1822, and I was like, yeah, I don't know that we can, but let's play 1836, which is almost, it's very similar. I like that it has, it's a very tight package for everything that it delivers, and the amount of replayability that it has. And I really hope that it actually gets picked up by somebody, because I've tried this with new players. I tried it with Tyler. She's from Ohio, which it didn't quite work as well as I thought it would as an intro game. But that, I think, is just 18xx in general. I feel like if you're gonna play a game with minors, this is probably as good as any game to play. Maybe 18 max, but I feel like it has a lot of really interesting decisions. It plays out differently. That central decision of the train rush, we can talk more about that, about how the first time most people play this game, the 3s are permanent because they buy in all their minors, and they don't have enough slots to get the 6s out. So when you kind of learn that and know the power of the minors, because this game is a little counterintuitive in that way, in that the minors are more powerful, I think, than the majors, because the minors, number one, can lay more track. Number two, they pay out 50-50, right? So it's basically like having 5 shares in the pool. And as long as you can run the minors, the better, which was my strategy at least, was try to get those minors. Obviously, I didn't succeed very much because I didn't have trains in them for another time. But if you get trains in those minors, if you can use your majors to feed trains into the minors, that's pretty powerful. That's a pretty powerful strategy. And that is unusual, I think, for 18xx games, where the minors are actually more advantageous than the majors are. And I do like you said, the majors aren't that great. The majors start in weird parts of the board. You usually don't even start there. You usually acquire a minor and do stuff from other parts of the board. But I like that. I like that it kind of turns that thinking on its head, where starting a major, acquiring the minor isn't necessarily the thing that you want to do. So for all of those reasons, I think this is a fantastic game. Definitely the best Winsome 18xx. You've played pretty much all of them, Jacob. What do you think compared?
How many Winsome X6s are there?
So
57, 36.
There's so if we want to go in order, there's 79, 57, 59, 68, 34, and 36. So that's 6, and this one's clearly the best one. I mean, and I don't you don't remember the 18xx too well, but I mean, I know you like 57 because but
it's fine. But that's easily been replaced by 49 after I got that.
It's. I feel like this has of the Winsomes, this has the most breadth, right? The most strategic decisions. 1857 is hot potato, right? It's musical chairs, right? And a lot of the other ones are kind of just they don't really have a lot of, just depth in gameplay. Whereas this one has a little more going to it. This is the first one where I feel like it's not just an expansion map, right? Or like we're going to concentrate on this one thing. So yeah, I think definitely one of my top games of the year. I mean, I think like top 2. I'm you wanted to try it more. I want to try it more. You say it's better every time you play it. I feel like this is definitely a game that I want to play more just to see how things play out. And it's quick, it's easy, it's a solid game. Unfortunately, it's a Winsome and you can't get it, but hopefully somebody picks it up. And I've been trying to push certain 18xx publishers to pick it up, and then it'll be more available. But yeah, any more thoughts or? All good?
Yeah, there's some kind of just, I don't know, it feels like weird stuff with the game. Like the stock market still has shaded yellow, orange, and brown areas.
Is a yellow? I think a yellow strategy is possible though, because there are 5 companies, and cert limit is 13. And usually with games with a few companies and a small cert limit, putting stuff in the yellow so that you can buy more certs or buy more shares of things. But with only 5 companies,
and it's not just the only 5 companies. It's that a lot of times in the early game, companies get to run first turn if they want to, and rather than falling back.
Yeah, so they don't fall back. Yeah, it's harder for. Yeah, I don't know whether it's worth it. I mean, we haven't played any games. I haven't played in any games where yellow strategy was like considered. So I don't know. I mean, I guess with more play we can see if that's a thing. But I mean, it's not really. It's with such few shares, and the shares pretty much go out. I think this is the slowest that the shares have ever come out. Like we had the companies come out very slowly. We only had 1 or 2 companies, and then I thought that you all were going to start a company and it was going to be a float storm, and it wasn't. It was just like I was the only one that started a company, and then another one got started, and then another one got started. Actually, no, the second one did get started when you two started fighting over it.
We just waited for you to dump all your money into yours first, and then fought over.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It doesn't. The game definitely does have some weirdnesses like that. Like the auction is can be a little. The buying the thing on the. I don't know why there are 3 6s in the game. I mean, I'd be curious to know why that was a thing that John thought that needed to be in the game. Like there's specifically an extra 6. Why? I mean, we bought 1 6 before it went straight to the diesel. I can't see a situation where we want 3 6s in the game. So yeah, it's stuff like that like I'm sure it was play tested, and he does a lot of development, and there's reasons for a lot of these decisions, but I'm not entirely sure why that is. But yeah, it's a solid game. Happy to play it. I'm happy. This is one of the few games where I'm happy to play just the first hour of this game. Right, just the auction, just the first 3 rounds, and then just see how things develop.
But then even as it was when we called it, we don't know who won.
We don't.
After the first hour, we certainly would have had less of an idea.
I'm not saying that I think we would have been able to determine who wins. I'm saying that so for example, I was at an 18xx convention.
Right, but then you're saying you're just taking some actions without ever finding out if they were good or bad.
I think that what I'm trying to say, and this is the same thing with the 1830 private auction, where just to play it over and over and over, just to be able to get used to it, just to see how the auction turns out. I mean, we've had an inside joke of I'm always annoyed at how the auction turns out, right? I actually was okay with the auction this time, but usually that's the case. It's one of those things where this is one of those games where I would love to do just the opening and just work on the opening, because the opening is important, and just get good at figuring out what the opening is, because the opening is interesting in this game, right? Just in the first hour, I think it's more interesting than most 18xx games that I've played. Usually it takes until SR3 right? Until things really start, until the fireworks really start to blow. And no, you don't know who's going to win, but like it is interesting to go through that process. I think in this game. So like when I was at a con and we're like, oh, we only have an hour. You know, you could play 57 in that time, right? But you know, I'd be down to just play like, you know, the auction in the first rounds and see, you know, when you cut me off here, when stuff happened, like it's interesting to see how that plays out and like, okay, and yeah, you're really just starting. That's the starting setup, really. I think those 3 operating rounds, but I think it's interesting, and I think that's something that you don't see a lot in games, in 18xx games, where it's just like, you know, the starting couple rounds is interesting, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts of 1836. Are you all?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's that, and hopefully we can play this again.